Hi everyone, welcome to another video. This is Nicole Spohr, and today I'm sharing 3 stylish script cards featuring Spellbinders Glimmer plates. Plus we're going to combine these brand new July 2020 Glimmer plates with past club kit dies for some really fun designs. I always love finding ways to incorporate those dies and products we might already have on hand with brand new things. We're going to start with the thank you and happy birthday stylish script glimmer plates and pair them with the August 2019 large die of the month Right On. Right On was one of the most popular large die of the month club kits, and I'm so excited that they still have some of these available. For a while they were sold out and they are back now for a little bit. You can make all kinds of things with this set. There's like a clipboard. You can make a clipboard shaped card, scissors, pen, paper clips, and of course the pencils. I will link to another video where I used this set and pretty much everything that comes in it at the end of this one, but I am going to do a bunch of repeating pencils and make colored pencils, borders for the top and bottom of my card today. First though, we need to glimmer our greetings. This is the brand new Thank You Stylish Script Glimmer Plate. In this particular collection, you get Thank You and Happy Birthday, and I'm going to use both of those today. In addition to these 2 glimmer plates, which come together, there is another one that we're going to be using on one of my other cards, in fact the next card, and then I used the other 2 that were released on some other cards this month, so I will link to that video at the end of this one as well if you want to see all of the stylish script collection glimmer plates in action. I have trimmed a piece of rainbow foil to fit behind my glimmer plate, and we are going to glimmer this sentiment with the rainbow foil on some Fun Stampers Journey tin foil cardstock. This is a great little, or tin pail, not tin foil, tin pail cardstock. This is a really fantastic light gray cardstock. Then I'm going to trim a thin strip of the Spellbinders black foil, and we are going to use a More Sentiments glimmer plate. This is a set of glimmer plates that has loads and loads of fantastic little sentiment strips and then banner dies or border dies. We are going to use that and glimmer From Me to You right underneath the thank you, kind of almost over it, if you will. I love kind of layering glimmer plates. So this first one's going to feature some layered glimmering. If there's any overfoiling, which I had a little bit here on my thank you sentiment, I just took a sand eraser and removed that. Now the first glimmer plate I thought I would use from the More Sentiments was a little too long for my design. It still would have fit, but I just didn't really like how it looked. So I'm going to switch to the From Me to You, and then we're going to simply glimmer this little sentiment here. I'm lining up my black foil. Remember that the silver side of the foil goes towards the paper. The colorful side goes towards the glimmer plate. When I remove this, I've got some fantastic layered glimmer sentiments. Now comes the part of the card where it's just assembly. Off camera, I die cut all of these colored pencils, and I used a lot of different colors of cardstock. I believe that there are, I want to tell you right, 15 pencils along the top and the bottom. So I die cut that pencil over and over and over from 30 different colors of cardstock. And then the rest of the pencil piece, I'm not, excuse me, going to need the eraser or the little silver tip around the top of the pencil, which you get all of those die cut pieces. So I simply die cut the pencil and then the lead part, and then I'm going to die cut the contrasting wood part of the pencil from Buttercream Fun Stampers Journey cardstock. I do want to mention that every single cardstock color I used is Fun Stampers Journey, which is kind of part of the whole Spellbinders Fun Stampers Journey collection. They have amazing cardstock. They die cut beautifully. Look at the detail in the pencils. It has those little lines. So amazing, right? To make my assembly really easy, I chose to use double-sided tape on my pencils, and the reason being, with liquid adhesive, it's going to be it could be a little harder to slip the tip of the pencil underneath the top there. I thought it would be easiest to adhere all the pencils, then assemble the pencil tips with liquid glue, and then slide them underneath the tip of each pencil. So with a little bit of double-sided adhesive, I'm not putting that adhesive all the way to the end of the pencil. This allows me a little wiggle room when I go to glue down the tip of the pencil, which you'll see in a minute. Some of this I did do off camera just to save time. I mean, putting 30 pencils on a card isn't the most exciting thing. It might seem like this is a super long kind of process, but really this card came together fast. The most time-consuming thing was simply die cutting and getting all of those little pieces. I die cut everything all at once. And obviously there's my phone in the way of my screen. Sorry about that. My son called me, so I was even chatting with him while I was working on this card design. Now, there's a little space. I did trim this background originally to 3 3/4 by 5. I'm going to have to trim a little bit extra off. I thought about just putting a pencil on that edge, but I don't like that at all. So I'm going to remove that, and we'll just go ahead and finish adding all of our pencils here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer. There is a ton of excess hanging off the edge. Look at even that little number 2 at the top. So if you are making pencils, how much fun is that? And using the whole pencil shape. I am using pencils here. But I love how the little borders add to this card. This is a great card to send maybe to a crafty friend who's done something nice to you too. I always think colored pencils are so nice. This would make a great teacher type of card, all kinds of things. So let's go ahead and just take our paper trimmer and just trim off that tiny little strip there. I still think my sentiment is centered, so all is well. I'm going to assemble the pencil tips, and this was, I want to say, the trickiest part, but really I just added a tiny dab of glue. I'm using an embellishment wand to pick up that contrasting wood color and then placing it on the tip. I would do probably 5, 6, 7 of these at a time, kind of letting that dry so they're not going to move at all, and then I would pick them up and pop them in place. And see how I'm easily able to slip them underneath the tip of the pencil, or the pencil color? That is why I use that double-sided adhesive tape for this part. Then I'm just adding little dots of glue and slipping the pencil right there in place, and it's going to stay put. This was the least messy way I could think of adhering all of these little pieces. This, again, while it seems really time-consuming, actually came together quite quickly. I always recommend, if you like to listen to audiobooks or watch TV or listen to a podcast or something like that, makes that kind of project so much quicker. I really want to create more cards with these colored pencils because, like I said, one of my favorite die collections, period. I love the whole Write On collection, but I love these pencils. So I'm going to simply finish adding the pencil tips. We're going to pop this whole panel on a white top fold card base. Super quick and easy. In the finished card, you'll notice there is a little heart accent. I actually added that after I do the next card, which I'll show you here in just a little bit. So our next card today, I knew when I saw the Life is a Beautiful Ride stylish script glimmer plate that I wanted to pair it with the July 2019 Large Die of the Month 3D Funtime Cruiser. At the time when I created this 3D Funtime Cruiser card back in July of last year, I guess a year ago now, I can't believe it, I actually did the 3D version of it because it does make a 3D bike. I decided to just use a portion of the bike and add it directly to a card base today because I thought the beautiful ride sentiment worked really nice with a bicycle or a car, or you could use it with Truckin' Through the Seasons or any of those other great dies from Spellbinders. So what I'm going to do here is kind of lay out my bicycle. I've die cut my components off camera, and I again have that tin pail cardstock background. This time we are going to use a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch panel. completely fills the front of an A2 size card base. And we're going to glimmer Life is a Beautiful Ride kind of in the upper left corner of this panel with that rainbow foil. The placement for my sentiment, I really just worked on finding somewhere where it looked good, but that the bike and the components for the bike and the flowers and the basket and all of that didn't interfere. I don't mind a little bit of it going over parts of the sentiment, but I don't want it completely covered because we want to be able to read that. So I'm going to slip my foil under here, and I'm really working to get this lined up perfectly. You might notice when I do the glimmering, I like to tape my glimmer plate in place, oftentimes with a little repositionable tape. I do this almost always. I find that I have a ton of trouble with my glimmer plates shifting, and if it matters where I am glimmering, so in this case it does because I want it in a certain spot on this background, I tape it in place. You don't have to worry then that maybe it shifts when you move the glimmer hot foil system to your die cutting machine and roll it through. So I just like that peace of mind with the little bit of tape. So look how beautiful that foiling is there. Foiling is one of those things that I really, really love. I wasn't sure at first, I will give you that. I just wasn't sure if I wanted to delve into something else and something new, but the elegance and just the professional look foiling adds to a design is incredible. I absolutely love it. I love it paired with stamping. I love it paired with die cutting. It is just another fantastic tool to add to your card making arsenal. And I can't say enough great things about it. I really love the results we get with foiling. I am just going to be adhering my bike then, because keep in mind, this is a, it was made to be a 3D project. You can definitely make a whole bike on a card, but I'm just going to use a portion of it since I wanted to do a portrait style instead of a landscape style card. And I'm going to glue it all flat to the card there, leaving room towards the front so my flowers in the basket kind of trail all up and out and kind of down. We're just building the bike with all these great components. I love when a die collection can be used in more than one way. So I loved this set when it came out. Last July, I was in the midst of moving, so I only used it to create my 3D Funtime Cruiser, and then I really just never got back to it. There are so many dies and so many fantastic club kits that I love to revisit. So it's fun for me when I can get that opportunity to mix something brand new, like the Stylish Script Collection Glimmer Plates, with previously released products that I absolutely loved at the time, I still love, and I want to get more use out of, because we know as crafters that when we purchase products like this, we want to be able to get the most bang for our buck. And I just love creating with die cuts anyway. You guys probably know that if you are a long time subscriber to my channel, but I'm a huge die cutting fan, have been since the days of scrapbooking, and it's fun for me to try to find new ways to use maybe those products that we already have on hand. And maybe if you are new to crafting, you haven't seen these. So I tried to pick large or past club kit dies from Spellbinders that are actually still in stock. So it kind of gives you some new ideas, but again, if you're a new crafter, you could still pick them up if you wanted to. Or maybe you don't subscribe to the club kits and you just wanted to pick up some of these great kits when they still have some available, you can do that as well. Now on the handlebar, the seat, and the wheel, I'm going to put a little glossy accents. I could have used a little glossier black cardstock, and I realized after I had already assembled this that I didn't, and I was a little bit bummed about it. So I just went with glossy accents, and I'm going to trace that on there, and it's going to dry completely clear, glossy, raised, and give just a fantastic finish to those areas on my card. Also, if you don't have a glossy black cardstock, this is a great way to achieve that look. Glossy Accents is a great product to have on hand. And I'm going to let that kind of dry. kind of living on the edge here since I went ahead and kept assembling my card while that's drying. Normally I would say wait and do that later, but I was on a time crunch, and so I am simply just going to keep assembling this card design. I'm adding multiple flowers and leaves and things. All of the dies that I'm using here are from that July Funtime Cruiser kit. So that means everything. The basket doesn't come exactly like this. I will tell you, it's the basket that fits on the back of the Funtime Cruiser. So you will die cut portions of it, use the embossing plate and everything that comes with this past club kit, and I just trimmed it kind of into a square shape to fit my card. There were a few leftover flowers and leaves. I'm going to tuck those up here in the uppermost left corner of the card. I felt like it kind of helped balance everything out a little bit. And then all along, I knew I wanted to stamp some sort of a small sentiment somewhere to finish it off. So our sentiment is "Life is a beautiful ride," and then I'm going to stamp "You've got this" from a Simon Says stamp set. We'll get to that here in a minute. I also want to make sure that I am embellishing the center of the flowers. Now, there are die cut little circles. I opted not to use those. I wanted some dimension to my flower centers. So I'm going to use Nouveau Crystal Drops in a whole assortment of colors. The colors I'm using are listed and linked here below the video on YouTube. So if you are looking for a specific color, you can find that information there and the links to the colors I used. I love Nouveau Crystal Drops because they're just a really versatile product. I'm not only using them for this card, but we're going to use some on our final card today, the Happy Birthday Gnome card as well. So we are almost finished with this card design. This was probably the biggest background I created. It took up the most room, and I felt like to make the Glimmer plate and bike have enough room, I kept my panel A2 sized, that 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. We will trim off anything hanging off the edge, and then we're going to adhere this to a white top fold card base. I felt like I needed a little bit more blue to my card. We've got the aqua in the bike, and we've got a lot of rainbow going with pink and purple and orange and yellow and green with the florals, and I wanted some blue, so I did pull in a little bit more Fun Stampers Journey blue cardstock here. And then remember I said I wanted to finish with a small stamped phrase. So we will be adding just a little phrase right underneath the bike. I played around with a couple of different places. I kind of thought I'd stamp it in the bottom right corner, and to me that just didn't feel like it worked. I kind of liked keeping it all on the left side of the card. I don't know. I don't know if it makes that much of a difference or not, but visually that's what I liked. So we're going to stamp "You've Got This" right down here below. I got to snip off a little bit extra of my greenery. And I'm going to use a little VersaFine Onyx Black ink to stamp that little phrase, and we're just going to use an acrylic block to do this. You could also place it in a Misty. My Glossy Accents and Nouveau Crystal Drops were not dry, so I didn't want to use anything that was going to press down on those and ruin that look. So here's where I was saying, once I got to this point, I felt like my thank you card needed a small embellishment. For me, I love a little heart or a little star, but a lot of times a little heart. So we're just going to take this little funfetti red heart and add it to the end of "thank you." And that tiny little embellishment just finishes off the card perfectly. Our final card features the Happy Birthday Stylish script, which is part of the Thank You and Happy Birthday set, plus the September 2019 Large Die of the Month Game of Gnomes, which is a hilarious play on word on Game of Thrones. But I love that it's mushrooms and gnomes, and you can build all of these adorable little scenes. I had a blast with this set when it came out, and I wanted to revisit it because it's one of my very favorites from last year. There are so many good ones. Spellbinders is just doing it better and better every month. So I love it, and I love adding to my die collection. We are going to create a little scene. My background panel of Tin Pail cardstock is 4 inches by 5 1/4. So this one is kind of in between our other two background sizes. we are going to place our happy birthday kind of down underneath the large mushroom. So I needed a lot of my components before I foiled my sentiment, so I knew where to put it, where it was going to fit visually the best, and that bottom left corner is going to work. I really feel like this card balances out really nicely with an additional stamped sentiment as well. So we will be stamping a little phrase from a gnome stamp set I found in my stash. It's one of my favorites from Lawn Fawn called Oh Gnome, and it's going to work perfectly for a couple different areas on our card as we get it put together, and you'll see that here in a minute. Overfoiling, there wasn't a ton, but there was a little bit, so I want to go ahead and get rid of that with my Tombow sand eraser. And then I have die cut the components from the Game of Gnomes die collection off camera, and we are going to add shading with some dye inks to the components for this card. So on the previous two cards, really didn't need a whole lot of shading, but I think that the mushroom and everything, just the components of this one, really benefit from some sort of shading. Whether you die cut everything from white and completely add color with ink or paint, or watercolor or whatever it may be, to adding shading with any types of ink that you prefer, to die cut pieces. So these were die cut from colored cardstock, and then I'm adding shading with all kinds of colors. So I think I'm using all Simon Says Stamp dye inks and blending brushes. Barely Beige is being used on the whipped cream or banana cream. I use both colors, which banana cream is just a little, like a little touch of ivory to it, I guess I would say. And then the whipped cream is the Fun Stamper's Journey white cardstock. And we're going to layer those pieces there. We're going to just build the large mushroom. Because it's the largest piece on our card, and it's going to kind of be in the background with our gnome hanging over the edge of it holding his little sign. And then the little mushrooms are going to be supporting characters down near the base. We want to get it in place first. So I worked on the largest component to begin with. We're going to layer the little stem pieces and put this all together. This probably is one of my most favorite mushroom die cuts out there. There are so many good ones. I love the mushroom houses, but if you're just looking for mushroom, this one is so much fun. And I love the gnomes. I love how you can build the gnomes. There's actually a standing gnome and a sitting gnome, and I didn't use them in either way for this card. I just used arms and like his head and hat and things to have him hang over the top, because that upper left corner of our card really has enough space. And so I thought that would be the perfect little spot to have him hanging over the edge. We don't have as much space down underneath on this particular design if you want to add more mushrooms, because that's where our sentiment is for this card. Because I don't have any great skin color type of cardstock, I am just going to die cut this and the beard from smooth white cardstock and add color with Copic markers. Those colors all can be found on my blog. I have listed them out. I'm not going crazy here. Really, really simple coloring. Not worried too much about a lot of shading. I just want to get some color on there. And then we're going to start assembling by adding the beard to the head first. I'm using some tweezers to help hold that in place. And then we've got our hat and the sleeves of his top from some blue cardstock. We've got his little hands. And I'm going to go ahead and finish assembling him. Really, and those hands are so small that I wish I would have colored the cardstock first and then die cut it, which is what I'm going to do for his nose and mouth here in a little bit. But I didn't, so I'm just adding that color, and we're going to add Island Blue dye ink to his hat and things for a tiny touch of shading. I want to mention as well, I'm using dye ink. Dye ink is going to go on and it's going to look a little darker than what it actually dries, because it's going to soak into the cardstock, and it will actually be a little bit lighter or fainter once that ink has dried. And you probably notice that in the mushroom, that especially since we're doing tone on tone, it will fade just a tiny little bit. So I want to figure out my placement for his arms, his face, and get all of those pieces in place. Now I originally thought I would glue his head right on to the design, but with those layers of cardstock for the mushroom, I was finding I did not like how it was looking at all. It did not want to stick very well. So I'm actually going to put some foam adhesive squares behind his head and also behind the sign that he's holding up, and it's going to make those pieces of our card really look a lot nicer. I've also added a little green apple ink to the grass tuft that we're going to place right over the base of our mushroom. There are dies for the eyes. I opted to not use them. I'm going to take a black glaze pen and add that detail to his eyes here in a minute. Let's go ahead and add color to the rest of our mushrooms. Some dull pink to the pink cardstock. This is Watermelon Fusion, Fun Stamper's Journey cardstock. And we'll layer those pieces together. The base of our mushrooms then are whipped cream, the white. And there is his eyes, and then I of course have his eyebrows from white cardstock that I'm going to pop in place. For the top of the yellow mushroom, we're going to use Simon Says Stamp Sunshine Yellow ink on the yellow cardstock. Layer those pieces together as well. And there are our cute little mushrooms that we're going to have down here along the bottom. I'm going to take sentiments then from that Lawn Fawn Gnome stamp set, and I had to kind of piece them together to make them fit. And sorry about my head in the way, you guys. I did not notice that when I was creating my card. I am going to piece together the phrase 2A, because that's part of a sentiment that's by itself, and then friend like gnome other is a whole phrase. Well, that's too long to fit the space, but this is definitely the sentiment that I want to use. And it will fit, but I have to get creative with masking. So we're going to pair up to a friend like and stamp that part right underneath the word birthday with black ink. I used a little post-it tape to mask off what I didn't want to get inky. We are going to clean our stamps really, really good. We can go ahead and put away the phrase 2A. And then we are going to mask off the part we don't want to stamp right below this, line it all up, and stamp gnome other centered right below what we just stamped. So again, I need to kind of line this up. I'm using a MISTI because I don't want to mess this up. And this is the best way I know to make sure that my sentiments are right where I want them to go. And look how cute. That just is the perfect finishing touch for that sentiment, I think. Now, I said I used multiple phrases from the Gnome stamp set. That is going to come into play because in the Game of Gnomes die collection, there's a sign. There's a little sign that your gnomes can hold. And I decided to stamp Sorry I Forgot, also from the Oh Gnome stamp set. There's also some cute Oh Gnome, Oh Gnome You Didn't. So you can stamp those little phrases. Any stamp set that you have that has a small phrase that you can customize this sign, I think works so great. What's awesome about this is obviously this set has gnomes in it, so it works really nicely with a gnome die collection. I'm going to stamp that with clear ink on orange cardstock. I think this is Orange Rave, Fun Stamper's Journey cardstock. Emboss with white embossing powder, and then die cut with the layering piece for the sign. So you get the sign pole, and then the layering piece. And we're going to die cut the layering piece, and then we're going to be having our gnome holding his sign right up there above. So it really gives visually that nice height at the top of the card, plus adds just a really great little extra sentiment, reinforces the theme and the scene. I did take some orange slush dye ink and add some shading to my sign. Any ink that got on the embossing, I'm just going to buff away with a dry microfiber cloth. When I glued his hand in place, I did make sure to not glue it down so hard so that I could lift up part of his hand and slip the little sign pole in. And then Just like his head, we are going to adhere the top of the sign with some foam adhesive so that it lies nicer against our card background. We want to finish adding our little mushrooms. I did die cut another little tuft of grass, added some shading to that, and we're going to pop it down right in front of our yellow mushroom. But I love the little trio of mushrooms down here near the base. We're going to add some coloring to white cardstock now with our skin color and then a mouth color, and die cut the nose and mouth. I did not use the eyes, and I didn't use the little cheeks. We're going to add blush to the cheeks with a Copic marker. We'll pop out those pieces to finish off our gnome. And adding the nose really finishes him off. You can use it with or without a mouth. I opted to do his little mouth today. I thought it would be fun. It gives his face so much character. And then I did go in and add some pink to the cheeks. We're going to take a white pen and add a little highlight to the eyes. If there's anything that needs fixed at this point, I saw a couple blending things, so I'm taking my markers and adding additional blending. It's time for finishing details. We'll glue this to our white top fold card base, and then I mentioned that I used Nuvo crystal drops not only on our Funtime Cruiser card, but also on this Game of Gnomes card, and that is for the polka dots on the mushrooms. I felt like my card needed a little something, but I don't want to add a lot of color. This is where translucent Nuvo crystal drops come in so handy. We're using yellow, pink, and orange, and it's going to dry completely translucent but have that hint of color. It also gives some nice glossy depth and dimension to our mushrooms, which is perfect. I love how this turned out in the finished card. So I simply want to add all of these little drops to the design. If there's any air bubbles, you can use a straight pen. I use the tip of my tool-in-one. And we're just going to add all of these great little drops and let this completely dry for 24 hours before trying to put in an envelope to mail. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these 3 cards featuring the brand new Spellbinders Stylish Script Collection Glimmer plates paired with past large club kit dies. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Spellbinders that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel to never miss a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.